When humankind first set foot on the moon, it didn't just change history. It changed the very definition of what's possible. That single step turned dreams into reality and silence into a story that would echo forever. But what made that step real? How did a fragile species, born under the blue sky of Earth, send one of its own across the cold void to another world? To understand that moment, we must go back to the 1960s, an age of ambition and fear. Two superpowers were locked in a race beyond the clouds. The Cold War had turned space into a battlefield of prestige, but behind the politics lay something deeper: curiosity. It was never just about flags and borders. It was about seeing how far humanity could truly go. And so, on July 16, 1969, at Cape Kennedy, Florida, the most powerful rocket ever built stood ready, Saturn V. It was a cathedral of metal and fire, taller than a 36-story building, and holding within it more energy than an atomic bomb. The world watched as the crew prepared, calm, methodical, precise. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Michael Collins, three names that would forever define the boundary between the possible and the impossible. Armstrong, a quiet test pilot with the soul of an engineer. Aldrin, a scientist, analytical yet driven by wonder. Collins, the one who would orbit the moon alone, carrying the silence of space in his heart. They were ordinary men in extraordinary circumstances. 10.9.8. The countdown began, and every heartbeat on Earth synchronized with those final seconds. At 0, a thunder of unimaginable power erupted. Flames painted the sky orange and white as Saturn V lifted from the pad, slower than it looked on TV, majestic and unstoppable. For the first time in history, a rocket capable of reaching another world carried humans toward destiny. When Apollo 11 reached orbit, Earth became a distant sphere, blue, fragile, and breathtakingly alive. It spun in silence, framed by the blackness of eternity. Armstrong later said, "It suddenly struck me that that tiny pea, pretty and blue, was the Earth. I put up my thumb and shut one eye, and my thumb blotted out the planet Earth." He realized in that instant how small we truly are, and how much we share. Hours later, Apollo left Earth's orbit, fired its engine, and began the long journey outward. They crossed into the shadow of our planet, and for the first time, humanity sailed beyond its cradle. Outside the window stretched a view one had ever seen. Billions of stars, cold and steady, like ancient fires waiting to be rediscovered. By the third day, the moon filled their view. Its cratered surface gleamed like polished stone, pocked with scars of time. Armstrong described it as magnificent desolation. When Apollo 11 entered lunar orbit, they were traveling around a world that had never known life, wind, or rain, a frozen memory of creation itself. Then came the moment that would live forever, the separation. The Eagle has separated, Armstrong's calm voice echoed. The small lunar module began its descent, falling slowly toward the surface like a metal snowflake. Each correction, each whisper from mission control mattered. When only seconds of fuel remained, Armstrong's hand steadied the craft. Contact light, a pause. Then, "Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed." On Earth, the world exploded with joy. People cried, prayed, and shouted. For a moment, every border disappeared. On that day, humanity became a spacefaring species. Hours passed. Then the hatch opened. Neil Armstrong climbed down the ladder, every movement slow and deliberate, and then his foot pressed into lunar dust. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, a sentence rehearsed, perhaps imperfectly transmitted, yet destined to live forever. Buzz Aldrin followed. The two men stood together under an alien sun. No sound, no wind, only the soft rhythm of their breath echoing inside their helmets. They planted the flag, not as conquerors, but as representatives of Earth. Behind them rose a barren horizon of silver and shadow, untouched by life, yet somehow alive with meaning. Dots. They collected rocks, measured dust, and placed mirrors that still reflect laser beams from Earth today. Every sample, every photograph told the story of the solar system's infancy. Science was being written in footprints. Then came time to leave. They looked once more at the tiny Earth floating above the horizon. Home, shining and small. "We're going home," Armstrong said softly. Engines ignited, and the Eagle rose from the surface, leaving behind a scene of eternal stillness. The ascent stage climbed into blackness, where Collins waited. For the first time in history, a human launched from another world. Docking was successful. 3 hearts reunited. Their ship turned toward Earth. Through the window, the moon slowly shrank. The dream that had been conquered, yet never diminished. On the journey home, time seemed to stretch. They floated in weightlessness, surrounded by silence. They joked, they worked, they thought. Each of them knew they would never see life the same way again. July 23rd, the capsule plunged into Earth's atmosphere, wrapped in fire. Outside, the temperature reached thousands of degrees. Inside, 3 men sat calmly, trusting their craft and each other. Then came the opening of parachutes, a sudden silence, a breath held by the world, and finally, splashdown. They were home. The USS Hornet recovered the capsule. As sailors opened the hatch, warm air and sunlight filled the cabin. For Armstrong, that first breath of Earth's air felt like the purest moment of his life. He smiled and said, "We did this for all of us." And the world listened. In cities around the globe, celebrations erupted. Millions looked up at the moon that night, realizing that humans had been there and come back. For once, the headlines weren't about war or conflict. They were about unity, courage, and hope. But Apollo 11 was not an end. It was a beginning. It gave birth to a new era of science and imagination. Lunar samples revealed the moon's volcanic past, teaching us about the origins of planets. Technologies invented for Apollo, computers, insulation, medical sensors, transformed life on Earth. Yet perhaps the most powerful discovery wasn't on the moon. It was within us. When the astronauts photographed Earth from lunar orbit, that tiny blue sphere rising above gray dust, humanity saw itself for the first time. Borders vanished. The planet became one. That image, called Earthrise, changed the way we see ourselves and our responsibility to this fragile world. Then came new dreams: Mars, the outer planets, the farthest stars. The moon became the first step, not the final destination. Every mission that followed, Skylab, Voyager, the International Space Station, carried forward the echo of Apollo's message. We can do the impossible. Today, new generations prepare to return. The Artemis program to bring humans, men and women, back to the moon, and then on to Mars. This time, we go not as rivals, but as partners, a united humanity reaching for the stars together. Apollo 11 proved that courage and science are two sides of the same coin. It showed that progress is built not only on brilliance, but on belief. It taught us that when we step beyond fear, we step into greatness. Space has always called to us, like the ocean once called the first sailors. We are explorers by nature. From fire-lit caves to glowing screens, one force has guided us: curiosity. It is the heartbeat of our evolution. When we gaze at the stars, we don't just see fire and light. We see reflections of ourselves. Every satellite, every telescope, every astronaut is a mirror showing humanity what it can become. And the farther we look into the universe, the more we understand our home. The universe is not infinite, not until we make it so. Its boundaries end only where our imagination stops. Every discovery opens a new question. Every question reveals a new frontier. Maybe one day we'll build cities on the moon, gardens under domes, children playing under artificial suns. Maybe we'll see sunrise over the plains of Mars, or oceans of frozen moons around Jupiter. But the greatest journey of all will not begin in a rocket. It will begin in our minds, because the true frontier lies not only among the stars, but within ourselves. Half a century ago, humanity proved that nothing is impossible. Today, when we look up, we don't see emptiness, we see invitation. Every star is a promise of the future, and perhaps the next step belongs to you, the one looking at the sky right now. Mars awaits, red and silent. The rockets are being built, the explorers are being trained. Where there is no air, we will create breath. Where there is no life, we will bring it with us, because that is what humans do. We turn darkness into light. Every mission, every experiment, every discovery is more than science. It's an act of faith. Faith in reason, faith in unity, faith in the idea that meaning exists even in failure. Space challenges us, but in that challenge, it strengthens us. Because in the vastness of the cosmos, we don't find emptiness, we find ourselves. We live on a small blue dot, floating in an endless sea, yet we think in infinities. Our minds contain galaxies, and the farther we travel, the brighter home becomes. Apollo 11 was not the end. It was the first verse in an eternal song. Every mission since has whispered to the future, don't stop, because the stars are waiting, and we are already on our way. Space is not a place we visit. It is part of us, written in our DNA, in the stories we tell, in the questions we ask. We look at the night sky not because it's far, but because it holds the answer to who we are. And as long as humanity keeps reaching upward, the story of the universe ahead of us will never end.